Boy, I love Christmas. And when you own a Jeep, Christmas can come more than once a year. So that's kind of what's happening today. I managed to pick up the Metal Cloak Pro steps from Metal Cloak, of course. And these are really neat side steps that go into the hinges of your door on your Jeep. And it kind of gives you a little boost up to the top of your Jeep. And because we have the rooftop tent, which you can kind of see behind me, it's a little bit harder for myself and my wife who are on a short side to get up there just to open it or even close it. So these steps are going to help a lot with getting into the Jeep. Now I had these installed on the driver's side once already. However, when I picked up the rooftop tent, I didn't realize that it actually opens specifically only on one side. You can't spin it. It has a front and a back. And of course, after we had picked up the tent, realized that the steps were on the wrong side. And once you break those hinge bolts loose, it kind of scratches up the paint that they had put on them from the factory. So I didn't want to just reinstall it and then pop it on the other side. So I went ahead and bought another set of these, and we're going to go ahead and install them today. For this install, we only need a couple of tools. From the instructions, we'll have a 9/16 and a 1/2 inch box wrench, a T50 Torx bit, a 732 Allen socket, a 3/16 Allen socket, and a 5mm Allen socket. In addition, they recommend a breaker bar in order to get the bolts out of the door hinges, since they're going to be torqued pretty tight, and then a ratchet set for your Allen ratchets. Although the instructions don't come with the steps in the box, they can be printed off of Metal Cloak's website. I recommend printing them off and reading through the instructions first before starting this project. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Going to start by opening up our box and getting our parts out. Alrighty. Like we mentioned earlier, other than the instructions, everything else for your steps is going to come in this box kit, including some anti-seize for the bolts, which I highly recommend putting on just to keep your bolts from seizing should you ever have to take these off for whatever reason. Of course, they came with some stickers for Adventure Rack Systems, which is owned by Metal Cloak and part of their brand. Now, I know some people definitely like to get digging into their prize. I know I am someone who, when I usually get gifts, I like to just tear into the packaging. But it's kind of important to also go through here and make sure that you have all of your parts. There's nothing worse than if you start taking apart something especially important like your door hinge, only to find out that you're missing a part, and then you're going to have to either try and paste it back together, or you're going to find yourself looking for a different set of wheels to get to your destinations until you can get the parts and finish the installation. All right, that was a lot harder actually than I anticipated for me this go around. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that even though I've got small fingers, I had trouble trying to get these nuts into the bolts and working with this tiny little space in here. And another part of that was probably because my box wrenches are straight, and if I had ones that have that little curve in them, that probably would have made it a little bit easier to get a hold of. But for the most part, it went pretty well, and I'm excited to move on to the next part, which is probably the most challenging, and that's going to be getting the bolt off of the door hinge. All right, so these are going to be the two bolts that they're talking about. Again, this is going to be kind of a challenge because these are factory tightened to hold the door on, so they're going to be pretty tight. Additionally, they usually powder coat these, or paint these when your Jeep is in the factory, so there's a good chance that the T50 that you have is not going to quite go in as smoothly as you're hoping it will. So it's going to require you to kind of chisel away at this a bit, really get it in there. And then again, they recommend it, I highly recommended it, is you get a breaker bar rather than your ratchet, simply because you can break your ratchet trying to get these off because of the amount of torque you're having to use. All right, so for this first one, I'm not going to use any movie magic, so you can kind of just see how difficult this is. We're going to start with the bottom one here. So again, I've got my breaker bar with my T50 Torx bit in here, and I'm going to try and break this loose. So kind of have to get it in here. Like I said, because of that paint, you're really going to have to make sure it's in there nice and tight, because you don't want to strip these. Then putting some weight into it. You can see from there, it'll just come right out. Give yourself, set it up too to kind of give yourself some leverage, because you don't want to make this harder on you. Then you want to let the Torx bar do most of the work. There you go. If this is kind of your first time stripping away paint on it or having to drill a hole, it's definitely a bandage that none of us, even veteran Jeep owners, want to have to do, but it gets easier every time at least. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do, I got my anti-seize here, and verifying that I have the JL spacer piece, I'm going to put that here, or I guess I will here in a second. Let's go ahead and get this screw here. Let's get some anti-seize on it. Again, do not need a whole lot. You put too much on here and you're gonna probably look like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. This stuff gets everywhere. All right, so again, we're gonna put the spacer on here. Then we're gonna put the step on, making sure we're kind of in the right spot here. Put our bolt through. Get it tightened on. Here we go. Okay, now that we got the top put in, let's go ahead and do the same for the bottom. So I still have one more bolt down here that I need to break loose. And that one was also a bit of a challenge. Okay, put this here, and then we have the bottom piece. I want to make sure you get this put on just right, because again, everything's kind of going to have to line up a little bit later here, and that's why you don't want to tighten anything down too tight before you get working on the rest of it. Go until we get the catch and our hole will line up. So let's go ahead and get that put together and we'll finish the project. With that, now you can see that with the back one on, I have both ready to go. They're really easy. They flip down so you can step up on top of them, flip back up so they're out of the way. And again, this really just kind of helps with reaching the top of your Jeep, whether you've got something stored up there. You can tell it's easier to get up here. Or of course, when we go to eventually put the rooftop tent back on, it'll help us with closing it up so that way we can get up, latch it down, and tuck it as needed. So pretty simple install, really easy to put together, and they look really good. So if you're looking for them, again, these are the Pro Steps by Metal Cloak or Adventure Rack System. They're really good quality, really good brand, and I've always stood by them, and their customer service is fantastic. So if anything and you have any questions, go ahead and give them a call. All right, so that is going to be it for today. Though keep an eye out for some other videos. I do have some extra parts over here that I'm excited to be installing here soon. So if you want to check those out, please always like and subscribe. You'll get notifications anytime the next video comes out, and you can join me on this little adventure I've started through making videos and building my Jeep. For those of you that are already subscribed and watching, I appreciate you stopping by. Until next time, happy trails.